Welcome everybody who's joining us slightly early. We're still waiting for everyone to join, and we'll start the webinar shortly. Okay, I think we should start. Let me just take the moment to welcome everybody to this very exciting webinar today. My name is Wessel van den Berg from Equimundo, Center for Masculinities and Social Justice, and I am the coordinator of the MenCare campaign, co-coordinator with our colleagues at Sonke Gender Justice. And as you may know, this is the last in a final, well, the last webinar in a series of 6 webinars that we've done following the recommendations of the 2023 State of the World's Fathers report. And my role is twofold today. The first one is just to open the webinar and to welcome all of you. It's really, really exciting to see the lineup, and we've got a really exciting set of discussions and resources to share with you. And then I'm also going to say right up front that I'm going to be the equivalent of the person in the projector little box at the back of the cinema who's trying to change the tape and avoid getting thrown with popcorn. So I will be switching between some of the videos that we are going to watch throughout the afternoon or the morning, wherever you may be. And just to ask for your patience with me as I transition into the videos. I am really pleased that we are doing this as Equimundo and MenCare with our partners at the MenEngage Alliance. And of course, it matches MenEngage's campaigning and work. And we're really pleased to close off the series with MenEngage. So let me pass over to our colleague at MenEngage, Tom, who will be our moderator for the day. So over to you, Tom. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Wessel, and hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Lovely to see you all. Glad to see lots of people just as interested in this topic as we all are on the panel. And yeah, I just wanted to say that yeah, we've got a very exciting lineup of lots of exciting and powerful videos that we're going to be watching together. And then we're going to be hearing a bit about the process and what the aims were, what the impact was, and what was the kind of thinking behind those videos that are trying to break down some of the rigid gender associations and cultural norms that surround care, and especially how gender shapes who is supposed to do care in terms of unpaid care work, such as parenting, but also care a bit more broadly, such as the qualities of care that we usually think of, such as compassion or nurture or care, emotional literacy and support. I can go through the agenda if you wanted, Vessel. I saw the slide there, and then we'll just then we'll jump in. But yeah, this is based on the State of the World's Fathers report, and so Nikki's going to chat us through. Nikki van der Gaag will chat us through that, which is the specific recommendation, the 6th in the recommendation acronym, CARING, each letter spelling one of the recommendations. And so we're on the G. So yeah, congratulations, Wessel and the team, for bringing this full circle with these webinars addressing each one of the recommendations. But G is for generating mainstream portrayals of masculinities and caring forms of masculinity in men in caregiving and nonviolent equitable roles in media, in mainstream media in particular. And I think, yeah, these are the videos and the speakers, and I'll introduce them as we go. So I think I'll come back to those as we come to them. And first, I'm just going to chat a little bit about today's topic. So if we just come back to that slide a little bit later, please. I really wanted to just underline the power of media before we start, which is kind of something that I think we're all aware of, but I just wanted to kind of underscore how powerful a phenomenon media is in our lives. 3.8 billion, according to one estimate, people consume global media platform content every day. And anecdotally, I think we're all aware of the presence and influence that media has in our lives, whether it's social media, video games, films, advertising, books, the news, movies, TV, music, and all these kind of different forms of media. So it is extremely expansive. It's extremely influential in all our lives. And there's a really good book by Creer called All About Power, which some of you might be familiar with. And it really spells out that one of the really potent forms of power is the power to set the agenda. And it's spelled out really nicely in the book by the author Srilata Badliwala, and how setting the agenda is done through influencing narrative, influencing media, having influence over the media, and how those editorial decisions and agendas that are put forward. It's a really, really major form of power. And I think what we're trying to show today is how to, I guess, utilize a more equitable way to represent masculinity and caring in a media landscape that's obviously the power of which is really well established. Within that, we're talking about representation. When it comes to representation, we can talk about how it reinforces stereotypes or how it can challenge stereotypes, helps people see themselves or see others in ways that are not based on narrow definitions, and how historically marginalized groups are underrepresented in the media or misrepresented. And even through history, media has been a tool that's been used as a tool of oppression to promote stereotypes, to promote racist tropes, to dehumanize groups and dehumanize the other. Throughout the history of media, these patterns have shown up, and I think we still live with the legacy of that today. That's how some of the stereotypes or how stereotypes are partly formed through those repetition and representation in media. So when it comes to men and representation, there's obviously no shortage of male representation in media and films. Men dominate the characters and portrayals of people in media. But what we're talking about today is how are men portrayed when it comes to caring? Because you've got classic tropes that associate men with in caring roles as being perhaps an incompetent dad or absent father, or physically or emotionally distant. But basically, what we're looking at today is how can we transform those narratives and how can we portray men in ways that shows that we do away with restrictive norms that say that caregiving is women's role or a feminine trait and not a masculine trait, or it's not a gendered trait. It's it's more of a human trait, and men should be able to tap into that as part of their human experience. And briefly, I just also wanted to note the media's role in backlash that we're probably all quite concerned about. Whenever we see media that is presenting diversity or trying to break a lot of stereotypes and often or show diversity of race or sexuality, gender, trans visibility, often it gets labeled by the far right and conservatives as part of a woke agenda or part of gender ideology. And so there is a really severe backlash, including in children's books that, for example, show non-heteronormative representations of relationships. That's a form of media. It's causing huge backlash of people who don't want to see that because they want to hold on to a very hierarchical gender order. And we're seeing social media used to represent extreme ideas about masculinity based on misogyny, including controlling or aggressive, abusive behavior towards women and girls that suggest or promote an idea of manhood that is about having power over others, including over women and girls, but also over other men. And really, that's kind of the polar opposite of care as we would really understand it. And so I wanted to just frame that's kind of the context we're in, where a lot of those messages are finding mass appeal and being circulated to not just boys and young men in their millions, but in their billions. And so how can we address that? And we're going to see some powerful examples of media today that are kind of an answer to that, I would say, and learn a bit about the process that is behind those examples. Now, excuse me. As MenEngage Alliance, for those who aren't familiar, we are an international alliance of more than 1,100 organizations and individuals around the world, working to transform what we phrase as patriarchal masculinities and working with boys and men for gender justice, social justice, and climate justice. And since we are a global alliance and we're working in many contexts and very diverse, we wanted to have our own kind of campaign that not addresses, but at least tries to explore ways to address this reality in which boys and young men are finding mass appeal in those regressive messages based on really rigid, domineering styles of masculinity. And in the run-up to the 16 Days of Activism, we ran a campaign called How to Talk with Men. And it was really about how to bring men and boys into this conversation and to create processes of gender transformative change. Excuse me. And especially how to call men and boys in a way that really connects with them, in a ways that are personal, in that they provoke close introspection, but also political, in that it compels men to commit to being allies in solidarity for gender and social justice. So we came up with the How to Talk with Men campaign to really ask, because we see a lot about the regressive messages, the problematic messages online, but we're not hearing a lot about the transformative processes that our members are doing every day in contexts all over the world. And so we wanted to elevate those. And I'm highlighting it now because these videos and these processes that the speakers are going to discuss today are really also another answer to the question of how to talk with men, how to bring men in on this conversation, and how to embody care, how to get them to recognize that care is integral to who they are and not something that they shouldn't do because of their gender. So I've got my timer on here, so that was my time up. In which case that's perfect. So I've said what I wanted to say, and I would like now to pass over to Nikki van der Gaag. Nikki is going to talk us through the State of the World's Fathers chapter, and specifically the recommendation on generating media representations of caring manhood and masculinities. Nikki is an independent gender consultant who's written extensively on gender, feminism, the inclusion of men and boys in gender equality. And Nikki's now the senior fellow at Equimundo, former director of gender justice at Oxfam, and has written or co-authored 6 State of the World's Girls reports and co-authored 5 State of the World's Fathers reports. And with that, I will hand over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Tom. And yes, welcome everybody. You have a real treat in store. I've had a look at some of these videos that you're going to be seeing later and discussing, and they're fantastic. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 2023 State of the World's Fathers in the context of this topic. But I'd like to begin with a call to action from African-American feminist and author Bell Hooks, who I'm sure many of you know her work well. If men are to reclaim the essential goodness of male being, we must envision alternatives to patriarchal masculinity. We must all change. She wrote this 20 years ago. I think it's just as applicable now. And as we reflect on gender equality and men's and boys' role in achieving it today, it's clear that the role of media and social media in envisioning these alternatives to patriarchy is absolutely key, as Tom was saying. We don't have enough material out there in any form that shows men or boys in caring roles. And there's so much that shows the opposite. As Tom was saying, men as violent, abusive, discriminatory, anti-feminist. And that affects the way men and boys, but it also affects the way that women and girls behave. So the influences on these changing norms are huge, and they're many: families, peers, the media, social media, gaming, politicians, celebrities. And the world of gaming in particular provides important opportunities for boys and men to connect. But it's also so full of violence and many gendered, racial, homophobic, and other things that reinforce harmful masculinity and prejudice. So, you know, countering this is so important, and that's why I'm really excited about today's session. So, yeah, Beth, you can give me the next slide. I'm just going to give you a little bit of context, only because some of you may have been to the earlier presentations. So we came up with, for the latest State of the World's Fathers report, the acronym CARING. And we have data from 12,000 people in 17 countries, which is not nationally representative, but is still quite a lot of people. And from that, we decided that these were the things, building on previous recommendations, that were absolutely key. I won't go through them all in detail because you will have heard them before. You can read them in the report. Just Google State of the World's Fathers and you'll find it. But about centering care systems, advocating for care in workplaces, revolutionizing the way boys are taught about care, and we'll come back to that, I think, investing in care, measuring it, disaggregating it, normalizing equal parental leave for mothers, fathers, and all caregivers. But the one today, as you know, is generating and disseminating mainstream media that portrays men and boys as caring and competent caregivers. Thank you, Vessel. Next slide. You can do the next bit of it as well, because I'm going to do them both together. Thank you. So yeah, women are still doing more care than men, and that's very clear from the data that we've got. But it is beginning to change. And one of the things that was key to that was that we asked a question about caring about care, and 70 to 90% of men across 17 countries agreed that I feel as responsible for care work as my partner. Now, that may not translate into practice, but it's a really strong statement. And, you know, it's one that kind of gives me and us hope, I think, that things can change. Next slide, please, Vessel. Thank you. And the other thing I think is that caregiving brings us happiness. So men and boys who said they were satisfied with how involved they were in raising their children were 1.5 times as likely to agree that they were the person they always wanted to be and to feel a sense of gratitude. And I think the other interesting thing about that was that we had another question which showed that men who care for themselves emotionally were 2 to 8 times more likely to report caring for others. So care leads to care, we know this, but this was evidence that really backed that up. Next slide, please, Vessel. Thank you. So research, both ours and other research, affirms that men and women want to care. For example, we found the vast majority of parents believe sons as well as daughters should be taught to do care work. A majority of men and women, more than 80% in most countries, disagreed with the statement that boys shouldn't be taught how to do household chores. So that's, again, something positive. Numerous studies, I'm quoting now the State of the World's Fathers from 2021, affirmed that boys learn to care by seeing men around them doing care work. So we're influenced by those around us. We're influenced by our families, both negatively and positively. And this was a positive, I think. Next slide, please, Cecil. Thank you. So this is a topic we could discuss for a very long time, and I'm sure a lot of you have really good ideas on this, so do come back to us. But why aren't more men and boys? I think it's not about whether they care or not. I think it's about whether they're able to show that they care. And one of the barriers, I think, is risk or ridicule from others. So, you know, we've got lots of examples of both men and boys and women and girls ridiculing boys who want to help in the kitchen, or men seen performing caregiving tasks in many cultures and contexts. Second thing, I think, is that there are few men in caring professions. So 80% of healthcare professionals are women, but also if we look at the kind of early years sector, there's a really tiny percentage of men who are part of the early years sector. And again, that's something that's to do with a whole range of things around recognition and around how much it's paid. But again, that's something we don't see men in caring in the media, because you don't see them in caring in professions in real life. You know, one's a reflection of the other. There are also few models in the media, as Tom was saying, of men and boys as carers. So a study by Ekimundo with the Gina Davis Institute and the Caring Foundation in 2020 found that in the United States, the 20 most watched shows by boys aged 8 to 13, there were very few that showed men as competent caregivers. And not only that, most presented men as uncaring and violent rather than caring and connected. And that is a really worrying, those are the most watched shows. So what, you know, we have real problems around female representation, but we also have real problems around the way that men are presented. And in another study in 22 by New Macho in the US and UK, more than half of the men in the survey said the media is making them feel worse about themselves because their desires in life do not align with what the media portrays. So we have a real problem here, and the things that you're going to see in the next hour of this webinar will really counter some of that. So just moving on to what we recommended from the report under this G under the media piece. They're kind of self-evident, I think. Communications and media campaigns to promote men's involvement in care work and prevent violence, producing television shows and other media that show men and boys doing the care at home. And as Tom said, the kinds of care they're doing is really important. I think we are seeing more men, fathers, seen playing with their children, but we don't often see them cleaning the toilets or washing the floor or taking responsibility for other tasks. So it's not just the playing with your kids thing, either in the media or in the home. And then supporting the active engagement of fathers and male caregivers in care work by means of public campaigns. We know that, you know, there are questions around how effective it is to have role models, but we do need to show men that it's possible and that other men are doing it. And we know at a grassroots level from the MenCare campaign many years ago that does bring about change. If your peers are also doing the same thing, you're more likely to do it yourself. Yeah, and I think in practice, these campaigns need to focus on the places where ideas around gender equality and masculinities are formed. So traditional media, social media, gaming platforms, schools, workplaces. And I think there's also a need to go beyond the binary and to depict diversity of family formations, as I think Tom mentioned as well, so LGBTQIA parents and non-nuclear families. And again, racial stereotypes, or, you know, the sexism and racism come together. Racial stereotypes are also very clear in the Gina Davis study. And I think the other thing is that the media needs to be more open about male vulnerability. So men and boys showing emotions, giving affection, depicting the complexities of real life caregiving. I think there's been, you know, a realization that using the word burden for care is really not at all helpful. But caregiving is a complex thing, and it has its high moments and low moments as well. And I think the media should tell stories that reflect men and boys' desires to be socially connected to their friends and families, emotionally grounded and caring. And if I think about the kind of games that my son and you know, younger men now are playing, and women too, you know, the violence in those are not about being socially connected, they're about shooting people mainly. I don't know how you get around that, so hopefully we can have a discussion about that too. And I know that all the material you're about to see today does this in a variety of creative ways. So I'm going to hand back to Vessel now for the really exciting bit, so that you can actually see some of the films from these different countries and contribute your own thoughts about them. Thank you very much.
Tom? Thanks, Nikki.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. And while Vessel works busily as the cinema operator, I'm going to just introduce the speakers as we go. So yeah, first up, we're very excited to share an organization that I'm always excited to see the media that comes out of this organization, which is White Ribbon Canada. Always really powerful examples of storytelling, and especially examples coming out in the last few years that really subvert your expectations and really challenge you to think in a different way. So yeah, I'm pleased to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of White Ribbon, which is Umberto Carrillo, who's a globally recognized gender-based violence prevention expert with a focus on engaging men and boys as allies in promoting gender equality and healthy masculinities. Umberto has assisted and provided expert guidance to many diverse organizations and governments, UN agencies, industry sectors, and is actually a former co-chair of MenEngage Alliance and current board member and founding member of the North American MenEngage Network. So welcome, Umberto, over to you, and looking forward to seeing the film that you're about to share and your reflections on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you everybody for the opportunity to be together in this webinar to talk about a subject matter that's so important to all of us, in particular to me as well as a dad, an adopted dad of three boys. This is an issue that is both professionally and personally important to me, and as it is, I'm sure, to all of you and to all the dads and father figures around the world. So I'm really glad to be able to talk a little bit about I Knew All Along, which is a campaign, a PSA that we promoted, launched last year during the 16 days of activism. It is White Ribbon's contribution to raising greater awareness around the role of dads, of men in promoting healthy relationships, in promoting gender equality and ending gender-based violence. As an organization that focuses on engaging men as allies, as agents of change, in turning around everything from individual behaviors to the systems and the policies and the practices that continue to promote this kind of inequality, to lead to gender-based violence in the homes, in communities, in workplaces, in institutions. We care deeply about these issues, and we find that the best approach to addressing them is to tell real stories or to depict real events, the realities of these interactions and the ways that these issues impact people's lives. And so I Knew All Along it's not a real story per se, but I think everybody can see themselves represented in some way in one of these vignettes. So let's start by watching I Knew All Along, the video, and then I'll say a little bit more about the campaign itself and what it's about and how we went about creating it. So over to you, Wessel.
Thanks, Umberto. Can I just ask the panelists, can you see the starting screen? Can you see the first scene? Great. Okay. Let's go.
My little girl. From the moment we met, everything changed. I've never felt so much love. And so much fear. Fear for you to grow up. To meet certain people.
Hey! Hello!
To hold your own.
Asking you just for your number.
Where are you going?
Come on, it's not safe out here.
I didn't know what could happen to you.
I didn't get your name.
But looking back at my life and the things that I've done.
No, absolutely not! Stop!
I did know. I knew all along.
So the inspiration for this video came from so many instances of men sharing with us on the front lines when we deliver workshops and engage in dialogue on these areas that they came to the realization of the importance of their engagement in this topic of ending gender-based violence and promoting gender equality as a result of the arrival of a daughter. And so we wanted to show that for many men, yes, that is a reality, but for many of those men too, they're well aware of their past interactions and their past behaviors and attitudes, and how they and how those have contributed to the kind of realities, everyday realities that women and girls and people of all genders experience. And we wanted to draw attention to the fact that men need to engage in that self-reflection. They need to look back at their past behaviors and attitudes and actions, and perhaps their silence as well, or their unequal contribution to family life, and realize that that has tremendous impacts on the lives of women and girls, and on their lives as well. So this campaign is meant to elevate that awareness, that discussion, that realization. We launched it together with Canada's Minister for Gender Equality, Marcy Yan, last year. The campaign was heavily promoted through social media. We invited the media to participate as well, and it resulted in significant uptake, over 1 billion impressions around the globe, and we didn't experience backlash. It's you've talked about when sometimes when these campaigns are released, and there is tremendous amount of resistance and backlash and speaking out against it. We didn't experience that. In fact, we have seldom experienced that as a result of these kinds of campaigns. And we think it's because we present the issues in a very heartfelt way, in a way that people can relate to directly, that they can see themselves represented. It pulls at the heartstrings. And we really believe that men are able to react to that approach in very empathetic and compassionate ways. They see themselves depicted, and it's not a depiction that lets them get away with those mistakes. It does pull at the heartstrings, but it also includes a very strong call to action, to create change, to be part of change, to do it for the women in their lives, for their daughters, but also to do it for everybody in the community and for themselves as well. So it's our contribution as a community of organizations doing this work. We have to come at it from different entry points. This is our entry point. This is our way to intersect ending gender-based violence, healthy masculinities, healthy caregiving and equal caregiving, and engaged fatherhood. This campaign is directed by Canada's Oscar-nominated film director, Hubert Davis. Hubert is someone who has directed quite a few of our campaigns, and we've done this work in partnership with two key marketing communications agencies in Canada, Ben Simon Barn and Narrative PR, who have been there alongside with White Ribbon, who are strong contributors to our work. And this speaks to the power of reaching out and using a multi-sectoral approach to addressing these issues. I invite you all to take a look at our newest campaign, Short Life Stories, that looks at the intersection between ending gender-based violence, men and masculinities, allyship, and ending transphobia, shortlifestories.ca. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to expand further during our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Humberto. And yeah, well, it's extremely powerful example. And yeah, to everyone else, I think you're in for more, more great examples of just how this form. Obviously, we're looking at a specific form of video on film, but how this form's been interpreted in different ways, and slightly different aims, but really coming into our agenda of, I guess, back to the idea of how to talk with men in different ways, but through storytelling and narrative. And it's really powerful, as you can see. So thank you, Humberto. I'm just posting the Short Life Stories URL so everyone can check that out as well. Please do. It's just as powerful and just extremely important and relevant at the moment to check out that video. So on to our next speaker. Again, similar level of power and narrative and storytelling. I'll let the video and Tamara share more about it, but very excited for you two all to see the next one, which comes from Status M, based in Croatia. And yeah, I'm pleased to introduce Tamara Tocic, who has a formal education from the Academy of Applied Arts as Program Coordinator for Youth at Status M. And Tamara's role extends to that of educator, facilitator, trainer, particularly focusing on engaging young men and drawing on her formal education in the arts. She actively leads the creation of campaigns addressing gender justice, nonviolence, and care within the organization, with an emphasis on practical integration of creativity and strategic communication, aiming to bring about tangible social change. So a really relevant background and skills for the kind of work that we want to learn about today on this webinar. So thank you, Tamara, and over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tom. My name is Tamara, as already mentioned, and I represent the organization Status M from Zagreb, Croatia. Thank you for the invite to this webinar and for recognizing our films and campaign as good and relevant. They are really short PCAs, so maybe we can just watch them and then I can tell you more about them.
Budi brižan i uključen tata od prvog dana. Iskoristi svoje pravo na očinski dopust.
Što misliš da otkažemo sve i samo ostanemo u krevetu?
Gdje da potpišem? Ja ću presući Miju.
Ja joj pripremim hranu.
Ja sredim suđe.
Ja smeće.
Usisavanje.
Dućan.
Plata.
Roštilj.
Salata.
Stol.
Pribor.
Led.
Veš.
Pošta.
Torta.
Sječice.
Šibice. I kad krećemo?
Sretno.
Žene podnose najveći teret obiteljskog života jer uz plaćeni rad obavljaju većinu poslova brige, od odgoja djece do kućanskih poslova. Vrijeme je da mi muškarci preuzmemo ravnopravni dio tog tereta.
Prvi dan škole, Lea. Si uzbuđena?
Ja može sutra biti prvi dan škole.
Brižni i uključeni tate odgajaju sretnu i zadovoljnu djecu. I ti možeš biti taj tata.
Thank you, Vessel, for letting us see these videos. So, as I already mentioned, these films that we just watched were produced as part of the MenCare campaign as public service announcement, generally with a shared goal, which was to encourage active fatherhood. But despite this common objective, each film uniquely centered on conveying a distinct message, as you could see. So one film emphasized the importance of active fatherhood, the other one dealt with the equitable division of care work within family, while the third promoted recently introduced paternity leave in Croatia, which was introduced just a couple of months before the films were released. So we kind of wanted the word to get out about it, and to fathers to start using their right to paternity leave. When it comes to the main audience, the primary target audience for these films was actually general public, hence the PSAs. We recognize that the limited involvement of father in care work come from rigid gender norms and stereotypes that dictate men's behavior within narrowly defined roles, often restricting them to the traditional breadwinner archetype, in contrast to the caregiving role, which is typically assigned to mothers. And for that reason, we aim to start a public discourse on the gender conditioning of parental roles through these films. And our objective was to enhance public awareness of the potential for men to actively participate in care work, and we wanted to highlight the benefits of engaged fatherhood for both children, mothers, fathers, but also society in general. And upon initial release on our organization's YouTube and Facebook, we managed to secure broadcast on several local networks in Croatia, but also Croatian national television, which was a huge thing. Because in a span of just 20 days, during which the films were aired, they managed to reach, they reached 85 broadcasts, all of them. And with each broadcast, they reached 145,000 viewers per airing. Alongside of that, the videos were promoted on SOWF social media, and there they reached over half a million unique users, which is actually a lot considering Croatia has less than 4 million citizens. Funny story about the television broadcast, the national television broadcast, was that it didn't go without challenges, because even though we met all the procedures and criteria when applying for having the videos broadcasted, there was a delay of over 9 months. So we kind of waited and sat on the videos and waited for them to finally see the light of day and serve their purpose. But we don't think actually that was that had anything to do with the videos or the topic being controversial, but more maybe with the unnecessary and burdensome bureaucratic procedures when it comes to making the decisions. At the beginning, when applying to put the videos to have the videos aired on national television, we were planning, we were considering the optimal broadcast time to reach a larger audience of men, particularly fathers, to be a prime time or maybe on sports programs. But unfortunately, these slots were quite expensive, in marketing terms, and already fully booked. So they actually made it over the 3 different programs throughout the whole day. When it comes to addressing the challenge of portraying men and boys in a new way, it's not really controversial, presenting men as caregivers, because people appreciate seeing fathers actively involved, taking care of household chores, tending to their children. And while this concept is nominally generally socially acceptable, it is less common in practice. Although urban environments with younger and more educated demographics and maybe better paying jobs are showing more engagement in care work, Croatia overall is still predominantly patriarchal, where women should stay at home and take care of the family, and men should go out of the household and earn money. So having that in mind, the national television broadcast of these films played a crucial role in reaching audiences in rural or more traditional and conservative parts of Croatia. In this context also, these films and their airing on national TV can be looked on as subversive, because despite occasional representations of men in other contexts than stereotypical, such as cleaning product and advertisements where men clean, which are primarily driven by legal regulations addressing stereotypical portrayals of women and men, in general, both men and women are still often portrayed stereotypically. When it comes to the process of coming to the idea and how we want to convey the message, when we were conceptualizing the visual narrative and communication style of our films, our aim was to depict like a genuine everyday interactions between father and their children. We wanted to show a down-to-earth, relatable portrayal that would resonate not only with dad in urban parts of Croatia, who are already maybe sensitive to those representations, but all around Croatia, and as I mentioned, to the maybe more rural parts of Croatia and more conservative. And we wanted videos to be charming and maybe even humorous, as you could see at the end of the last video, where little girl put some makeup on the day and so on. And our vision included capturing authentic moments in fathers' homes as they engage in everyday activities with their children. For us, it was really, really crucial to avoid artificial and idealized and, so to say, like sugary depictions of relationship of father and child or whoever in family. I'm sorry.
Just a gentle note on time, if you could. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't want it to seem fake, and it was also really, really important for us to to avoid reproduction and reinforcement of gender stereotypes. But I just want to say that despite the fact that production company that we choose to collaborate with which was previously engaged in producing socially engaged films, theater, etc., showed that it is sensitive to gender-related topics. And despite our extensive briefings, subtle gender norms found their way into the scripts of the first films. So, it's the gender norms are so deeply rooted, that even though you are an ally, maybe you can't help yourself to, make a script in which father makes a barbecue, or is not changing a diaper, but is taking the kid to the park or playing sports. So this is what we had to have in mind, what we had in mind when dealing with, coming to deciding on the idea and deciding on the script. And even we were also discussing that it would be maybe advisable to have like a light education on gender transformative representation for a production company, but I mean, that didn't happen. So I will just speed it up. When it comes to, how successful we were, I think we were quite successful. We believe we were quite successful because we reached a lot of audience. We can say also, we managed to convey the messages that we wanted without reproducing gender stereotypes, but it's like a small drop in the sea of all kinds of different representation of men in media. So happy to contribute to show something else, but it shouldn't stop there. So I would happily answer some questions later, because I don't want to take more time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Tamara. Yeah, and that's a good reminder. We do have a Q&A portion at the end of this session, so please add your questions into the chat, or there's a Q&A feature I think you should have access to as well. And we'll keep an eye on those and bring them back at the end. But yeah, thanks, Tamara. That's again, I love those videos. Especially infusing some kind of touching, humorous elements of caring into it's not a burden as well. It's both work and something that people get a lot of reward out of at the same time. So with that, we'll move on to our next video and our next speaker. The next speaker is Shashwati Chatterjee, who is based in New Delhi. She's been working in the development sector for the last 6 years, particularly around gender, and is now part of Breakthrough India's media team and has been working on the issue of men and masculinities within that team for some time. Shashwati is also into video games and spending time on social media, so perfect person to talk to for this session. And with that, I'll hand over to you, Shashwati. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. It's a pleasure to be invited for this webinar, and thank you so much for having me on. I actually think that a lot of my fellow panelists have covered a great deal of what I wanted to talk about, and it's great to see that the thing that we're working towards overlaps in so many ways. I think that's actually absolutely fantastic. Before asking for the film to be played, I actually wanted to talk about how at Breakthrough, the very beginning of Breakthrough, as it began, like it's an organization which is over 2 decades old now, and we've always believed in using media to talk about difficult and maybe taboo subjects, and using culture to change culture, so as to speak. And the film that we're going to show, Rashmi Metric Pass, which basically translates to Rashmi, the name of the young girl, will be a 10th grade pass. And we believe in using media such as this, especially in a country like India, where things like Bollywood, short films, etc., is such a huge like immovable factor. And we believe that that is a singular route to enabling change in the hearts of people. But please go ahead, and I'll discuss the film after we show it.
मैं हूँ रश्मि, मैट्रिक पास।
बड़े बड़े सपना देख रहे हैं बिटिया।
कौन? मैं हूँ रश्मि, मैट्रिक पास।
छोड़ दे, थोड़े ही दिनों में तेरी शादी करा देंगे, फिर सुनते रहना हमारी तरह अपने सास की।
अरे रश्मि बिटिया, आ गई?
मैं हूँ रश्मि, मैट्रिक पास।
नहीं बिटिया, गांव में जब लड़कियां सयानी हो जाती हैं तो शादी करती हैं, मैट्रिक नहीं, समझी?
क्या हुआ रश्मि? क्या हुआ बेटे?
आप झूठ बोलते हैं।
क्यों?
लोग कहते हैं मैं मैट्रिक पास नहीं कर सकती, आप मेरा शादी करवा देंगे।
मुझ पर विश्वास है तेरा?
तू जैसा चाहेगी वैसे
है ना?
होगा तेरा कल।
तो ये मेरा वादा है, तुम जरूर बनोगी मैट्रिक पास। यही सच है, तुम जरूर बनोगी मैट्रिक पास। हाँ।
तू चल तू चल तू चल तू चल।
एक पिता का वादा निभाने के लिए चाहिए हर माता पिता का सहयोग, जिससे देश की 8 करोड़ लड़कियों की तरह रश्मि का ब्याह 18 वर्ष से पहले न हो। आप अगर साथ देंगे तो रश्मि बनेगी मैट्रिक पास।
मैं हूँ रश्मि, मैट्रिक पास।
तू चल तू चल तू चल।
Thank you so much. Quick thing, when I first joined Breakthrough, this was one of the very first films I saw, and I think that really set the tone of my working with the organization. This film actually was part of a campaign that Breakthrough ran a couple of years ago called My Dad, My Ally, which I think the name itself is self-explanatory. But before I expand to My Dad, My Ally, a little bit about how Breakthrough connects with masculinity as an organization, because that also feeds into this campaign. At Breakthrough, the thing that we believe in is creating a world where gender discrimination and violence is unacceptable. And we believe that it's absolutely critical that we work with men and boys directly for this. We have I won't say we've changed the way we work, but we have constantly experimented with the way that we work, and currently we work very closely with adolescents. But My Dad, My Ally, when we ran that campaign, it was based on a central thing that we were seeing in our communities at the time, that within communities, within families, within societies, if there was a specific figure or a group of figures who were a bottleneck as such to the growth of adolescents, especially young girls within the communities, it was usually the father figures. It could be uncles, it could obviously be fathers, it could be grandfathers. And this particular film, Rashmi Metric Pass, was aimed at ending early marriage. Which is a phenomenon where essentially it's very common for girls to be married off the moment they hit puberty, and the question of them becoming the baseline, the standard is so low that even reaching standard 10 is a huge jump, because the goal for girls is essentially considered marriage. So we wanted, through Rashmi Metric Pass, to essentially create a film or to create a medium through which we could directly talk to fathers who were one of the many figures within the community who we were seeing through our research, through our work in communities, as bottlenecks to the growth of many young girls within the community. And through the film, I wanted to draw your attention to one thing, which was that in the film, when Rashmi walks through her village and she meets various people who tell her that you want to pass class 10, but that's just a dream. The many people that she meets are potentially the normative, the gender norm tradition of her community, that this is probably also the very same community her father grows up in. And I think the reason that her father is presented at the very end of the film, and that Rashmi takes the entire journey until then to meet her father, is that she sees the environment her father grows up in and the environment most men grow up in. And this is something we recognize when we talk to men as allies and to men as change makers in their own rights. We recognize the many forces working on them, on fathers specifically in such communities, where people want them to be a good father, a good husband, and a pillar of the community. But what that means in context of patriarchal gender norms is completely different. A good father or a pillar of the community within patriarchy is somebody who can be recognized as who keeps their daughter at home, who gets her married off at a respectable age, who ensures that their household is under control, so on and so forth. And through Rashmi Metric Pass, and very specifically through Rashmi's father, we wanted to present the idea of a positive deviance. A role model who did not do what people around him expected him to do. The reason I specifically say positive deviance is that we recognize that it's a deviance, because in our work, we have in communities, we recognize that people know that this is not the norm, that when fathers stand up for daughters, they recognize that this is not how things and we didn't want to create a norm out of thin air. We by placing Rashmi's father among a sea of people, including women, who basically expected Rashmi to get married off, we wanted him to stand out and point at him and basically say, this is an example of excellent parenting. And this is an example of a positive role model. And we also, through Rashmi's father, wanted to recognize that it is difficult. It is difficult for fathers to push back against gender norms, against traditions and communities, against the community itself. That in order for him to push back, he has to deliberately court societal disapproval, and he has to push back against what in India we say log kya kahenge, which is what will people say, what will society say. It's something that lots of young people have to hear from everything, which is if you want to wear small clothes, etc. What will people say? I'm speeding myself up, but the last thing that I will mention is that through Rashmi Metropass, we wanted to look at the father-daughter relationship from the point of view of the father, but also from the point of view of a daughter who has a father who A, innately respects her, B, who always stands up for her. We have done this such in conversations through other campaigns through which we have endeavored to show positive deviance, to show role models of fathers who have spoken out for their daughters, who have stood alone in communities. And we wanted to point at that and say, this is a good thing. That even if it seems like people around you are saying that you are wrong, we're telling you that it's not wrong. I just wanted to quickly connect to what Nikki said at the beginning of the webinar, where she talked about men not having role models for caring. That is precisely what we're trying to do: create role models through a medium which everybody consumes, cinema, films, etc., and give people examples that there may be fathers may see other fathers around them who don't have what they're looking for, but we are telling you that it's the right thing. But I hope you all enjoyed the film. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Shaswati. I really appreciate how you've explained the kind of the thought process behind the decisions, the storytelling decisions that went into that film. And yeah, what a beautiful film. Seeing a lot of appreciation for it in the chat as well as all the other films. And we still have one more to come, which again is just going to keep blowing people away, I think, because we have one more really powerful example, or two examples actually, this time from South Africa. And so it's my pleasure to hand over to Harriet Perlman, who has worked in the field of education and entertainment in film, TV, and publishing for more than 30 years, has spearheaded numerous entertainment and education projects and campaigns, and has experience as a writer for video, for websites, for print, a book editor, film producer, publisher, educational trainer, story editor, and researcher. Has worked in different formats, including long form and short form television, drama, feature films, a whole raft of really relevant media expertise, and is currently creative producer for Heartlines, based in South Africa, which included producing a series of 6 anthology films as part of the Fathers Matter campaign. We're not going to see all the films because I think they're about 20 minutes each, but we'll see a trailer as well as another project that Harriet has been involved in. So with that, over to you, Harriet.
You're on mute, Harriet. There we go.
Thank you. And really, I'm just so excited seeing the other films. They're just gorgeous. So it feels like there's something very powerful and strong here. So the Fathers Matter campaign, which is spearheaded by Heartlines, an NGO in South Africa, is rooted in research. And I'm going to show the trailer to these 6 anthology films and then just say a little bit about them. So here goes.
So your father is a very important person.
Yeah, he's always busy. It sucks.
Scholarship.
Tshepisitse bokamoso le tla bona challenge ya gago.
Re tla o bitsa ha ngwana a sa tshwere ke tlala hape. Mohlomong o tla ja di-brush tsa hao.
Don't mess this up, okay?
Your circumstances does not dictate your destination.
Go no sana le ke nna le wena mo ngwanaka. Ke tla be ke go eletša leina la gago tla bona gana gore ke nna ke tee ka mo stadium mo.
Did you ever go camping with your dad?
How we respond to circumstances can either take us down a dark path of self-destruction or a path of growth and self-discovery.
If you were there, I wouldn't have found myself staring at a bottle of pills, wondering if every man I ever loved would leave me.
Wa tseba gore o ka kitima go feta mo ngwanaka.
Ansafanelwa ngokuba ngumzali wakho.
Kanje provide. Breathe ngwanaka, hema.
He needs a tough approach, Lynn.
Thome ka matla.
Sa hloke marantanyana a gago, at least ke letsogo le sa bonagaleng.
O fetše ka matla.
Wa tseba mpho e kgolo o ka e fang Zenzile ke ho ba teng ha hao.
It's not that simple.
It is that simple.
So Vessel, if you'd like to just share, I'm going to talk to just a few slides, and those slides will be available because I think they speak to what we were trying to do. So these are 6 24-minute films called the Fathers Matter film series. Next slide. The aim of the 6 films are to promote the positive, active presence of men in the lives of children. And next slide. I'm aware of time. We followed a very strict edutainment process so that the films are both entertaining, engaging, emotional, but also that they are rooted in research and carry the messages that our research highlighted are really tenacious in South Africa at the moment. So we did formative research. Oh, stay on that one for a second.
Sorry.
It's all right, I can speak to it. We then designed messages, we scripted and developed the materials, but we pre-tested them as well, which is very important because sometimes what you think is reading in a certain way, in fact, is reading quite differently. We produced them, we implemented the campaign and the films, and we are in the process of doing a very extensive evaluation to understand really what messages worked and what change did or didn't happen. Next slide. So the campaign is multimedia, and there is what is called the dose effect in social and behavior change communication, that the more media you have out there, the more possibility there is for change. And so we have films, we went out on radio, there's social media, and now we're involved in a community mobilization campaign on the ground. Each film has a different message. I won't go into those right now because at the end I'll show you all the films are available on our website so you can watch the full film. Next slide. So the films were launched on our public broadcaster in June. And just to say something very quickly about what was important about that, we leveraged existing days that were important in the public conversation. One was June the 16th, which is Youth Day in South Africa, and the other is Father's Day. And when you do that, your broadcaster really likes you. Well, to some extent, because they want your material. You're not begging them to show it. They're looking for material. It went out on Saturday evenings. There were repeats on the Wednesday, and now it's available on YouTube. Next slide. So we premiered, and this is just a little bit about reach, we're still, in fact, in the evaluation looking at impact. We reached about 1 million people. Through the repeats, we reached another 2 million people. They were then rebroadcast. And so we reached in excess of 3 million people through this process. Next slide. Just to say also, radio was very powerful, and we had an cumulative listenership of about 32 million. Next slide. So one of the things before I show you the other piece that I just want to talk to a little bit, and that is why long format is good, because it allows you to tell stories that you follow a protagonist, a lead character, a positive deviant, as has been so beautifully shown in your video, Siswati, going through a complex journey of change, making new choices, standing up against the norm is hard. And so that's what long format allows you to do. The second thing it allows you to do is to leverage the popularity of a brand to do other things. Everybody knows Disney. They have one show and a zillion things that then go around that, but the brand is what in fact brings people to it. And the third thing that I just want to say is that what's really, really important is the process. To do research, to test, to check, and then in fact only to put out. So you're very sure that your messages are landing in the way that you want them to. But as a last thing, one of the things it allows you to do is in fact then to do spin-offs of that. And so after we had flighted the films, we had a number of talk shows on our broadcaster, the SABC. There was a number of webinars, engagements, and then what we did is we produced a number of short format videos, because those can go as PSAs, those can go on to talk shows as well. And we've started an on-the-ground community mobilization program called Fathers Matter Sports Clubs. And why are we doing that? Because we want to meet men where they meet. We want to break stereotypes of what men think men are and what care and being an active and positive father is all about. And so what I want to do, and then if there are a few minutes left, is show you one of these short format videos. And it's about a club of bikers in Soweto who meet and want to be part of the Fathers Matter campaign. So let's watch that, and I'll come back and just add a few things at the end.
Oops, sorry, wrong one.
All right.
Can't describe that feeling. It's an undescribable feeling. You know, when you are on your bike, when that wind blows, it feels as if it's taking away all your problems. Once you get on this baby, trust me, you forget about all those things. We are just a charity organization as GSP, you know, trying to help the needy, keeping a helping hand where it is needed.
The thrill of being on this thing is just unimaginable.
I tried golf and it wasn't for me. I bought a bike and I got onto it and it was like the adrenaline rush and everything. I promise you, if I don't get on this bike in 2 weeks, I'm miserable.
Most people think of us as bikers as gangsters.
This campaign is removing the idea that bikers are not fathers.
Within the biking fraternity, I'm known as soft touch. Most young boys here in the township grow up without fathers, you know, or father figures. So we just want to be that father figure. not someone that they can look at and admire from a distance. Someone that they can actually touch, have a conversation with.
We decided to partner with Headlines to Fathers Matter so that these young boys can be mentored enough to stay away from the street, because now lately they take drugs at a very tender age. Why? Because they don't have father figures in their lives.
Bikers are fathers as well, and they are trying to really show that they are like any other father.
Him and I are best friends. We talk about anything and everything under the sun. He's one of a kind. I respect him. He guides me. He's my coach. It's such a blessing, being a father, especially having boys.
I'm giving you all the best that I can. Being a father is
It's the camaraderie of the fraternity of bikers.
It's another way of bringing fathers back together with their sons. Doesn't have to be biking. Yeah, you can be doing something different. You can hike with your father.
Today I'm here, I'm with my father, I'm with actually 3 generations. My grandfather is around as well.
The most important thing about biking is actually the brother. Doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. That is unbelievable. All of us in our club are fathers. Yeah, so responsible. Responsible. There you go.
Okay, so I just want to say sort of 1 or 2 things in conclusion, really. It's really important to break stereotypes, and part of breaking that stereotype is also meeting men where they meet and meeting them where their interests are. And that was a key thing for us in the Bikers campaign, and we hope that's going to continue. We now have a number of partnerships with sports clubs, soccer clubs, rugby clubs, so that in fact we are engaging with fathers to also get them on board as role models for our campaign. What was also important about the 6 films is each addressed a different aspect of fatherhood and a different aspect of what the challenges of being a father were. So I'll end with 2 questions because I saw you telling me to stop. One is a challenge of working with your public broadcaster is now there is not one broadcaster. There are many, many places where we are accessing media, and that relates to Tom's concern, is how do we in fact draw audiences with something new? There is so much choice. And so having one public conversation is hard. We have to come at it multi-pronged. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Harriet. And that was a really wonderful, I guess, behind the scenes look at how you really navigate from start to finish and post-release these kind of storytelling pieces. So much thought and so much strategic thinking goes into it. It's not just let's hand a brief to a scriptwriter. It's really, really enlightening to see how you've actually drawn it on the research. You've built a narrative that addresses certain points. You've tested it and released it into the world, and then assessed the impact. I think that's really important insights. I'm sure others in the panel have similar approaches as well, and we've touched on some of those. So we have 10 to 12 minutes for questions. A couple of questions have come in on the chat, so thank you for those. One question is about the pressure on men to perform gender roles in terms of breadwinner archetype, expectations to be good at earning money, managing finances and properties, and addressing challenges without support, or I guess that kind of idea that men are supposed to be resilient and independent without needing or receiving care themselves. So that comes from Aman Aurora, so thank you for that. I wondered if I think we've addressed some of those points about breaking down those kinds of stereotypes, but I'm just wondering if anyone on the panel, Nikki included, would like to talk a bit more about subverting those gendered norms around masculinity specifically.
Can I go ahead? Or
yeah.
Somebody else?
Lottie, please go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I can talk after you. Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to mention one thing, which is that it's a very valid question. And one of the things that we have worked on is talking about sharing the load, essentially sharing the burden, because just as men often have to are forced to hold the lion's share of work outside the home, women have to hold the lion's share of work inside the home. And so we talked about balancing the load. And there's a campaign, there's videos that breakthroughs have worked on, which is called Kaam Dono Ka, like work for both people, a responsibility for both people. So which is again breaking the norm, and at the same time distributing the work and no longer having to not have care, and being able to ask for care at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Humberto, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think a powerful way to follow on these public education campaigns is to create the opportunities for men in particular to come together and to debrief and talk about, the representations of issues in these films, and to relate it back to their lives, to their own lives, to their own experiences, both present and past. And it's really powerful when that conversation happens. I'm talking about like on the front lines now at a micro level, which, in addition to us working to advocate to change practices and policies, we have to engage with men individually and in groups and collectively to create individual behaviors and attitudes and to change those around. That's so crucial because often there's a disconnect between the policies that we're trying to work towards, and then how those policies are actually experienced and lived and carried on in practical ways into people's lives. So I can share with all of you that we have the most awakening, transformative conversations around these issues when we're able to relate it back to people's individual experiences, and it's so powerful. Because when we talk about those harmful norms, those stereotypes about the impact that it has on women and girls and to us LGBTQIA people and racialized folks and indigenous people, it helps to build greater understanding, greater empathy and solidarity and compassion amongst men. And then we relate it back to their own lives, to their own upbringings, and to how men experience those stereotypes and those norms as well. And it helps to create this newfound commitment and realization that we got to work on this together. Like the status quo is not possible. It can't continue because look at the impact that it has on people's lives. So continuing along those lines of storytelling, but making it relatable to ourselves and for us to role model as men, telling those stories, creating vulnerable spaces, and challenging spaces as well is so important in these approaches.
Thank you, Humberto.
Can I
Nikki. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do you want to go, Nikki, and then Tamara?
Tamara, you go first.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what Humberto said, and it's also an answer maybe to the question of how to work on the the kind of this deconstructing the breadwinner archetype. I mean, we should talk to men and make them talk to each other, and maybe make them see themselves in which way patriarchy is hurtful for them, but also in which way how patriarchy is connected to capitalism. So maybe this is also something, what is needed to incorporate into these conversations. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
just three very quick points, which I think answers the other question a little bit in the chat as well around fatherhood. So first of all, these norms start really early. So working with boys and working with boys and their parents and the community around them at a very young age. And Ecomundo has this Global Boyhood Initiative that's doing exactly that around sharing resources. Secondly, that this is structural and not just around individuals or norms. So some of the things we need to change are things like parental and paternity leave, making sure that fathers get paternity leave and that they use it as well, and non-transferable, i.e. daddy days, so that if they don't use it, they lose it, is one of the keys there. I think we recognize that fatherhood is actually a point where men can either go return to the kind of traditional gender norms or actually change. And so it's pivotal to have that leave there for all sorts of different reasons that you can read in the State of the World's Fathers reports. And thirdly, money. We don't value care work or recognize care work, partly because it's seen as women's work and men are the breadwinners, and partly because we don't pay it well. We don't pay care work well. So if you're a breadwinner, you're often not a carer, you're not a paid carer, let alone an unpaid carer. So the pay and the value for me is the third thing that really needs to change. Thanks.
Thank you. That's really, really crucial. And thanks for bringing in the systemic and structural issues that we really need to address and advocate for change on those. I have a question, just coming back to something that was mentioned by Umberto around the fact that we're working in solidarity with for gender justice, for women's rights, for LGBTQI plus rights. I just wanted to ask, because the kind of media that you've been working on, it does have representations of masculinity, of men and so on, and what we would consider to be the privileged group within the context that we're exploring via these media formats. But we're also representing not men and boys, like women and girls, and people of diverse genders and sexualities and so on. And I just wanted to ask how you ensure that your work speaks to their priorities and making sure that their voices are represented in the way that they want to be represented, and how we can work in partnership rather than, I'm sure, to not risk working in a siloed approach in which we're kind of having a fairly narrow-minded or myopic view on men's experiences. Yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I can maybe talk briefly about that, Tom, in the context of our current campaign, Short Life Stories, where we address the intersections between transphobia, discrimination, gender-based violence, hate, and an exclusion of trans women and trans folks. That campaign was developed in partnership with key 2S LGBTQIA organizations in Canada, in particular with the GAL. It was researched and tested directly with trans communities. The actors themselves are members of the trans community. The director is a member of the 2S LGBTQIA community. So it is done in partnership, and it is done to look at the intersections, the compounding discrimination and violence and exclusion that trans women and girls in particular experience. And it is meant to address the rise in hate and violence that we've seen towards trans communities over the past months, over the past year, in particular in North America, but around the world. And it is about organizations like White Ribbon coming forward and demonstrating our solidarity, our playing our own role to address an issue that has for too long stood on the front lines of our consciousness and our activism and our approaches. And it's in the spirit of how White Ribbon was first created over 30 years ago, in order to call men into the conversation, because men back then were too standing on the front lines as we dealt with the aftermath of the December 6, 1989 Montreal massacre, where 14 women were killed by a young man who hated women, who hated feminism, and didn't think that women should have a place in engineering. So we're drawing on that historical approach and then that historical demonstration of allyship and calling for change, and lending that support to a community that has for too long had to deal with this on their own and has been excluded from programmings and advocacy efforts and from much needed change. So this is where we can all play a role. And as you said, Tom, making sure that our approaches are not singular, that we look at the full diversity of the issues, that we look at fatherhood and parenthood in its full diversity, and that we consider the impacts of both systemic and also the day-to-day experiences of violence and discrimination that underrepresented and marginalized communities are experiencing now more than ever, perhaps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Umberto. And I wonder if we have time for a very quick 30 seconds takeaway from each person, perhaps on what your takeaway is from the session, maybe from each other's films, and the broader recommendation from the State of the World's Fathers report on the need to generate and disseminate mainstream media that portrays men and boys as caring and non-violent, competent, equitable caregivers. Should we start with Harriet? Are you able to share a quick takeaway?
Yeah, just I've loved watching all these resources, and I think there really needs to be opportunities to share and collaborate, possibly to translate in some instances. So I think that would be really, really beneficial. Thank you for sharing all of these and for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks. There's so much potential from these. I think everyone in the who's expressed in the chat agrees as well. Okay, thank you. Shaswati?
I think I echo what Harriet said, and I was also thinking about how the I won't say the problems, but the issues that masculinity runs up against seems to transcend borders, transcends a lot of language issues, etc., etc. And I was talking about overlapping problems, but I think that we've all spoken to the same thing round and round here, and I think that has been like a learning experience more than anything else. And I think if we have a central path forward, and probably I think that itself has been a learning experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. Watching the films side by side, you see all of the cultural nuances, but you see the common threads as well. So it's really interesting to watch them like that. Thank you. How about Tamara?
Yeah, as I already said, thank you for the invite, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to see and contribute with our little short films. And also, I just wanted to say that maybe, I mean, we know that the media landscape really lacks more affirmative messages, initiatives. So maybe we should work more on advocacy, put some more efforts directed to promoting positive representations. Not just, react when something stereotypical is shown or something sexist, but maybe, push for something like some presentations that we've been able to see today. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. And Umberto?
Yeah, engaging in this kind of dialogue, seeing the powerful impact of these amazing resources really gives me hope that change is possible. And I think it's along those lines that we need to continue to work hard, advocate hard, work on those systemic changes, and work on changing hearts and minds as well, and everything in between. So I'm so honored to work together with all of you as a community of practitioners in advancing this work. And more is needed, scaled up approaches are needed, more resources, more de-siloing in how we do this work, more social justice organizations need to be involved in, and more intersectionality is needed in our approaches. And we're here to be part of the solution, and count on us as agents of change. And if there's anything we can do to support your work globally or locally, reach out to us, because we want to be there and we want to work alongside all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Umberto. And over to you, Nikki.
Yeah, it's not often you come away from a webinar these days on anything to do with gender equality feeling hopeful. The world feels pretty grim sometimes. So I just thought those were all so inspiring. And watching them together, as you say, it's like I feel as I've been in a kind of warm film show. They were just great, but they also show the real challenges that we face. And actually, would it not be very interesting to have a similar one on gaming? I wonder whether we could find alternatives in the gaming world, because that seems to me quite a really cutting edge kind of discrimination, misogyny, etc., etc. So maybe that's the next one to think about. But I think, yeah, coming together, understanding, learning, being more intersectional. I'm conscious they're all in English. I don't know whether, I guess some of them were originally not, but just thinking about language, as Harriet said, feels really important too. But thank you. I've been really honoured to be part of this.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Yeah, we'll see about that gaming idea. I agree. It's such a huge medium, huge form these days as well. So totally agree. That would be an excellent topic to explore. And with that, yeah, I'll just say thanks to everybody on the panel and for sharing your incredible, creative, strategic communications pieces. It's been a pleasure to share all of your videos and to moderate the panel. And yeah, with that, I'll just hand back over. Oh, thank you to the whole team who's put together the webinar as well at Equimundo and the MenCare campaign team. And with that, I'll pass back over to you, Vessel, for the last word.
Thank you so much, Tom. And I really appreciate MenEngage for the collaboration on the webinar and the nuance and the dedication that you brought to developing the program together. Thank you so much, Tom, specifically, and to all our panelists, of course. Thank you for everybody who's remained with us. We have just 20 seconds of quick announcements, which I think are really exciting. Please go to our videos page on our website. Thank you, Alan, for the notes in the chat. We will send out an email that has all the resources in one place. It will be in our newsletter that's coming out in January, and we will send it to our whole network. But also in the context of that, Alan has mentioned in the chat, but also I would invite everybody to go to the website. I put one website there, advocacyconsultinggroup.com, but there's also the Daddying Film Fest link that Alan put in the website. We're really excited to partner with D3F, the Daddying Film Festival and Forum, who, as you may know, have been compiling films like these into a very exciting festival, judged and selected by children, amongst others. And it's a really wonderful opportunity to give attention and amplification to this work. So please go there. I think all of these films deserve to be submitted there, but also refer to other media makers who you know who may be interested in submitting. And then I want to close by just saying that we are so excited that our first government department profile is up on the MenCare website. For those of you who may know about the MenCare commitment, it's a policy instrument that we've been using to show where governments have been taking the steps that we want to applaud, and following on tomorrow's point about giving attention to the things we like as well as the things that we don't like. This is one way of doing that. So we're really excited about that. And if there are any government departments that you're working with that we can display on the website and show the good work that they're doing to promote men's engagement caregiving, please let us know. With that, I call this webinar and this week to a close for me. I give all of you who are in the morning the permission to go on leave now. You can tell your employers that I say so. It's a part of the radical political step to rest. And I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.